facilities themselves are variable. They have different operational practices. They have different combinations of equipment and technologies that are used, and the inputs are different. So we did determine that in establishing a draft rule, it was necessary to address that variability and to try to come up with a system that acknowledged that variability does exist. We determined that a simple numerical standard that would be applied across the board, such as everyone must recycle 90% of the metal that comes into their facility, would not be appropriate in view of the variability that we did see. So first of all, we put forward a definition for the term maximum extent practicable. And in that definition, we attempted to recognize the variability I've described and also to set up a guiding principle for evaluation of facilities and whether or not they have achieved an appropriate recycling rate. The definition of maximum extent practicable, it means at a rate that results in recycling or reusing the greatest amount of waste possible and minimizing the amount of waste disposed to the greatest extent possible without causing unreasonable increases in facility operating costs or unreasonable impacts on other aspects of the facility's operation. Determination of the maximum extent practicable includes consideration of the availability and cost of technologies and services, transportation and handling logistics, and overall costs that may be associated with recycling and reuse. So in establishing the definition, we try to recognize, as I mentioned before, the variability and also the individuality of the facilities that we're dealing with. Since we did determine that it would not be appropriate or practical to impose a single standard on each facility, since those are very different from each other. Secondly, we established a method to evaluate recycling rates and what individual facilities are able to achieve in terms of recycling. We chose to do that through a program of waste characterization that would be required at each processing facility. And essentially what that is an evaluation of the inputs to the facility against the outputs of the facility. The outputs being both products and also waste products that may be disposed ultimately. In devising that system, we certainly were cognizant of the potential costs of doing waste characterization, and we did some work in looking at other states and the types of methods that are in use to actually determine waste characterization methodologies. We expect that visual assessments will likely be sufficient to get the kind of data that we need with regard to the nature of the waste and the quantities of the waste. And we're presently putting together a detailed guidance that would assist facility operators in employing that type of visual assessment approach. We are looking at annual reporting of those characterization results, and that would include data concerning both the inputs to the facility and the outputs. We would be looking for a calculated overall recycling rate, not on an individual waste stream basis, but an overall recycling rate calculated based on that data that's gathered. And we would be looking for an evaluation in narrative form, likely, and a justification for why the wastes that were disposed were in fact disposed rather than recycled. We're hoping that in our evaluation of those reports, we'll be able to identify areas that can be improved to try to prompt additional recycling at some facilities that may take the form of recommended changes in processes and practices at facilities. We do look at this as a process whereby over time the facilities may be able to achieve better recycling rates, and in some fashion we might be able to assist in achieving higher rates of recycling than in use. And the final piece of the rule, as I mentioned before, has to do with standards and requirements for using processing residues. Primarily construction demolition debris processing residues are used in this regard. For final cover, operational cover, and grading material at landfills. Because this material has the potential for exacerbating gas management problems at landfills, we looked at a series of requirements that we hoped could address that so that the material could be safely and effectively used for those purposes at landfills. We're looking at such things in the rule as allowing the use of material for cover and grading only at facilities that have active gas collection and management systems. And if it's used for cover, the draft rule calls for placement no greater than 9 inches in depth. And finally, we're looking for, when a proposal for use of that material comes in, we're looking for a detailed assessment of other potential impacts on other aspects of the landfill, such as the gas collection system itself, leachate management, odor issues, and so forth. So those are changes that are proposed specifically in Chapter 401 of the draft rulemaking package. That completes my overview, and I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have now.
Does anyone have any questions of Ms. Clark before we start this, the public portion of this hearing? Thank you, Paula.
Thank you.